This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, markets are pretty happy today as the fact that risks around Brexit and, of course, the U.S. stimulus measures have disappeared. Most emerging market risk assets were poised to gain today, with MSCI's basket of emerging market stocks gaining about 0.5% on the day. Now, in South Africa, the JSE closed in the green, up just slightly. That's despite President Ramaphosa announcing a return to level 3 lockdowns on Monday. Across the continent, activity is fairly slow as we see most businesses shutting down for the holidays. Now, also coming up on today's show. Investors are concerned South Africa's stricter COVID-19 rules could further delay economic recovery. The European Union pins its COVID-19 recovery on a possible $2.2 trillion package. And we'll take you for a cruise where Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda hope to revive connected maritime operations. Well, let's kick off today's show in South Africa, where the government has again tightened its COVID-19 restrictions, banning alcohol sales and extending a nationwide curfew. Now, this comes as infections surpass the 1 million mark in the country. Recently, authorities confirmed a new, faster spreading variant of the virus was detected in South Africa, and it is driving the second wave of that pandemic. Here's CGTN's Yolisa Njamela with more.
South Africa is now back on level 3 lockdown from level 1. The South African government employs a risk-adjusted easing of the lockdown, which entails 5 levels. Level 5 is the most severe, while level 1 means life is relatively back to normal. Level 3 also means that the nationwide curfew will be extended. It will now be from 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. Except for permitted workers, emergency and security personnel, nobody will be allowed outside of their place of residence during curfew. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the government has effected this out of necessity.
We are at an extremely dangerous point in our fight against the pandemic. Unless we act now, and unless we act decisively, the number of new infections will far exceed what we experienced during the first wave, and thousands more people will lose their lives.
Many other restrictions have been introduced. These include the ban of sale of alcohol from retail outlets and on-site consumption of alcohol.
According to the data that we have, with every relaxation of the restrictions on the sale of alcohol, the number of trauma cases reporting at our hospitals has increased.
Under the new regulations, the wearing of masks in public will now be mandatory.
A person who does not wear a mask could be arrested and prosecuted. On conviction, they will be liable to a fine or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 6 months, or both a fine and imprisonment.
The president has criticized South Africans for largely failing to adhere to the COVID-19 regulations.
We have simply let our guard down, and unfortunately, we are now paying the price. There is none amongst us who can claim that we have not heard of anyone becoming ill or even dying. This is a crisis that affects all of us. This is about our lives. The sooner we understand that it could very well be us in that ambulance speeding by, or us in that hospital bed, or us being buried at that funeral, the sooner we come to the reality of what we are facing right now.
The president says the new regulations will be reviewed within the next few weeks. If there is sustained decline in infections and hospital admissions, the current level might be adjusted again. Yudisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's stay in South Africa now. One company has been working with the government to manufacture coronavirus test kits that promise to expedite results. Now, Africa's most industrialized economy has been facing a severe shortage of testing kits with a long backlog of testing. Here's CGTN's Daniela Pearson with more.
A shortage of test kits undermines South Africa's early response to the coronavirus pandemic. A local research firm called Cape Biotechnologies has stepped up to fill the gap.
When we realized that the pandemic would be coming to South Africa, we then looked into our portfolio and we decided to look at how we can respond to the crisis for South African market, because we knew that South Africa and the entire continent basically relies heavily on imports, and we knew that because of the pandemic, our country will struggle to get the test kits. So we said to ourselves that we need to stop doing what we were doing and just work on COVID-19 testing project.
Cape Biotech has been working to roll out up to 5,000 test kits per day with support from the government. The locally manufactured testing kits produce results within 2 hours, compared to the 4 to 5 hours timeframe taken by the imported ones.
We develop these kits locally using our local biological resources from the biodiversity hotspots. So in the sense that, for the first time the world has access to, products and kits that are sourced from African biological resources.
According to the World Health Organization, a shortage of testing kits has been a challenge across Africa. For South Africa, a weakened rand currency means straining a budget that was already in bad shape before the pandemic. As of end of May, there was a backlog of more than 96,000 unprocessed specimens awaiting coronavirus tests in South Africa. For Cape Biotech, there has been a surge in demand from international companies. The team of scientists hope to further put Africa on the map for global solutions. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Now, of course, we know President Ramaphosa just announced a return to level 3 lockdowns in the country. Let's find out more about that with Sumitra Naidu. She joins us in Johannesburg. Sumitra, always good to have you on the show. Season's greetings. Now, of course, there are serious concerns right now as to whether another lockdown is economically tenable for South Africa. Treasury's coffers are almost bare, and of course, the risk of a sovereign debt crisis is more and more likely. So what exactly has been the reaction of South Africans to this move by the president?
Hi, Uche. Well, as you can imagine, South Africa is between a rock and a hard place right now. And this is what the president alluded to in his address to the nation last night. As devastating as this decision will be for the economy, it had to be made in favor of the health of citizens and saving lives. Business groups have come out in support of the tougher restrictions because of the rapid rise in infections. We're now well over 1 million infections and over 27,000 deaths. And these numbers have been rising in just the last few weeks. More than 50,000 cases were reported since Christmas Eve. That's significant in less than a week. And it's also become evident that a lot of people were not taking the necessary precautions like wearing a mask and staying away from social gatherings and other crowds. The liquor industry, though, is not pleased. They understand and support government in its efforts to curb the spread of the virus, but they still feel a blanket ban is not the answer. During the previous ban, over 7,000 people in the liquor industry lost their jobs, 30% of breweries closed down, and the overall industry lost over $1 billion. The government, too, lost billions in tax revenues. But it was clear from the president's speech last night that something needed to be done because too many lives are being lost and alcohol-related incidents are putting more pressure on the health system. All other businesses are allowed to operate with safety protocols. Restaurants will have to close at 8 p.m., but bars, pubs and clubs are not allowed to open until the 15th of January. As the president said, we have let our guard down and now we are paying the price. Uche?
Well, given the economic impact this new lockdown is going to have on industries such as the alcohol sector, as you just mentioned, the government is clear that it does not have the fiscal room to continue to provide further support, of course, beyond that $34 billion in a relief package, which it already provided. Now, are there any more measures that it is planning to put in place to help cushion the effects of this new move?
Well, simply put, not at this stage. Some of that funding is still being dispersed, and the authorities are trying to recoup some of the money that was lost to corruption. You had some in the private sector applying for relief for employees, but that was then pocketed. Government employees too were found to be dealing fraudulently with companies for PPEs. The Special Investigating Unit is probing about 75 businesses. Right now, government is doing all it can to come up with enough money to secure vaccines. The Solidarity Fund came through with $19 billion to help get South Africa into the COVAX facility. And according to the president, we should have the vaccine by the second quarter of next year, but only enough for 10% of the population. It is a dire situation. We don't have any more details from government in terms of what kind of support they can make available. All of the funding that they did make available in terms of, the relief for employers, employees, for businesses, have all finished. Uche?
Well, Sumitra, despite the importance of this new level 3 lockdown, as you mentioned, it has impacted sectors such as alcohol, the alcohol industry. And now the previous 2 alcohol bans, they had a devastating effect on the industry. We know already 30% of breweries in the country had been forced to shut their doors for good. What is the fate of industries such as the liquor industry going forward, given what just happened?
Well, the liquor industry is again warning of mass job losses, as many in the industry barely made it through the first ban. In the previous ban, over 7,000 jobs were lost then, and we lost over $1 billion in terms of revenues. For those businesses, those liquor businesses that survived, they believe that they can't survive another ban. They are appealing to government to review its decision urgently and lift this ban, especially now during the peak tourism season. It's also the festive season. Sales are usually high at this time. But again, that's why government brought the ban back, because it's burdening the health system right now, and they need people to be more responsible. So it was a tough decision for them to make. Some in the liquor industry say they want to go to court to actually help to go against government to actually lift this ban. It is in place for the next 2 weeks. We don't see anything changing in that time. Uche?
Well, how did markets respond to yesterday's decision? We saw, of course, the rand remaining relatively calm despite those renewed restrictions. How did equity markets and other markets respond?
Well, we didn't see any major swings on the day, but the rand did weaken slightly towards the afternoon, but that was mostly on the back of a stronger dollar. There are some concerns filtering through about the economic impact of being back at level 3 lockdown, and of course this ban on liquor. The liquor industry is really important for this economy. It is a big contributor to GDP, so it is a huge concern. And of course we also have a very high unemployment rate. If any more job losses occur in this industry, it will only add to that. But overall, the market moved slightly positive in the afternoon, gaining almost 0.5% by the close. It wasn't a bad day overall, but it's important to note that the rand and the rest of the market, react mostly to international events. The fact that most countries overseas are receiving the vaccines already is some good news for the markets. There was some optimism coming through from the United States that the US would expand its stimulus package, so that helped to offset the losses on the day.
Well, as always, many thanks, Sumitra, for your insight there. That, of course, is Sumitra Naidu joining us in Johannesburg. Let's turn our attention now to Libya. The country's central bank has approved a single official exchange rate for its currency, the dinar. The Apex Bank's board set the new rate at 0.48 dinars per US dollar and said it will go into effect starting on January 3rd. Now, the United Nations says this is a much needed move amid years of conflict that crippled its economy.
A decade of violence and instability, in addition to a power struggle between the East and West governments of Libya, has taken its toll on the North African state's economy. Dwindling oil production levels and reduced revenues due to lack of security have worsened Libyans' living conditions. It also affected the local currency, the Libyan dinar, which now has 3 exchange rates.
There is the official rate for the state expenditure and imports, such as food and other basic necessities. The rate is 1.4 dinar per US dollar. It's the official rate used by government and people. The second exchange rate is also used by citizens, economic entities and traders. The rate is 3.93 dinars to the dollar. It was adopted to balance and reduce the gap between the official rate and the black market price.
The central bank has been divided into 2 conflicting branches, one in the capital Tripoli and a second in the east of the country. A recent ceasefire and peace talks between feuding factions have allowed for a resumption in oil exports. It also enabled a united central bank to meet for the first time in 6 years and adopt one official exchange rate starting January 2021.
The people have lost faith in the banks and all the financial institutions and therefore have saved their money outside banks. Having one exchange rate and a stronger banking system could convince Libyans to deposit their savings in banks or local projects, and this would stimulate the market and pump badly needed liquidity into the economy.
With its vast oil reserves and untapped resources, some experts are optimistic the Libyan economy can quickly pick up itself from the shackles of ruin caused by the conflict. But that will only depend on politicians creating permanent peace and stability. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And now look at our corporate headlines today. South Africa's Eskom has lost 2 appeals related to a High Court ruling, setting aside its decision to cut off power supply to 2 municipalities. Now, the 2 are highly indebted to Eskom, with debt jointly running into millions of dollars. As a result, Eskom had threatened to cut power to get them to settle their debts. And Airbus has solicited engine ideas for a narrow-body jetliner in development, drawing a proposal for a new geared design from General Electric. It isn't clear whether the mooted aircraft will be a new model or an upgrade to one already in the company's catalogue, such as the A320neo or the A220 single-aisle jets. Now, the court decision does not say when GE proposed the new engine, when the plane might come to market, or how far along any talks are. Meanwhile, Ryanair and Wizz Air Holdings will take away the voting rights of shareholders outside the EU in order to ensure they comply with the bloc's airline ownership rules, and that's after the Brexit transition. Now, airlines with a large constituency of British shareholders risk falling out of compliance with EU ownership rules at the year end. The bloc requires airlines that operate routes between 2 destinations within its borders to be majority controlled by EU nationals. And Jack Ma's besieged Ant Group is planning to fold its financial operations into a holding company that could be regulated more like a bank, potentially crippling the growth of its most profitable units. The fintech giant is planning to move any unit that will require a financial license into the holding company, pending a regulatory approval. Now, the plans are still under discussion and still subject to change. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we are heading into a short break now, still to come on the show. We'll be looking into Zimbabwe's amended regulations on mercury mining. And shares from Tunisia's Assurance Maghrébia Group are up for grabs.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global Business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Uche Okoronkwo. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
With a contraction of 3%, 2020 is the worst year on record for sub-Saharan economies. In countries as diverse as Nigeria, Kenya and South Africa, unemployment rates soared and incomes fell. 2020 was the year when the continent's first pandemic-era sovereign default happened, reminding Africa about a long-ignored debt crisis. But 2020 was so much more than just a year of economic pain. Join us as we explore the highs and the lows of 2020 and what lies ahead on Global Business Africa.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Well, let's turn our attention to Southern Africa now, where Zimbabwe has ratified measures that relate to mercury and mining. The country wants to phase down the use of mercury in a number of products and processes. It also wants to control measures on emissions to air and on releases to land and water, as well as regulate the informal sector of artisanal and small-scale gold mining. Well, Farai Makuteya joins us in Harare with more on this story. Always good to see you, Farai. Now, of course, explain to us what exactly does this move mean for Zimbabwe's mining sector?
Well, Uche, this move means that Zimbabwe is joining several other countries in the world that have ratified a treaty that pays heed and takes into account the impact of mercury on the environment as well as human life. The impact in terms of artisanal miners, who are the main users of this substance in their operations, will be marginal because already Zimbabwe has existing laws that fall in line with this treaty that it has just ratified. And so we don't see any major changes. What we are likely to see going forward is that there will be more robust enforcement enforcement of the laws, but certainly Zimbabwe is already aware and has taken into account and recognizes the impact of mercury, which is why it has a raft of laws that already deal with its use, its release, as well as its disposal. So in terms of actual changes on the ground, they'll be minimal, but I think Zimbabwe just making a symbolic gesture and joining several other countries in the world in ratifying the treaty.
Because my next question to you, Farai, was going to be, how does the government plan to implement this new move, especially because it will impact smaller scale miners in the country who are a large part of Zimbabwe's gold output. So give us a sense of how this will impact that particular industry and how the government can implement this.
Indeed. Well, when the government tabled its report in terms of ratifying this treaty to Parliament, it did say that because of the existing laws within Zimbabwe, it would be very easy to implement. There would be no need for creation of any new commissions, agencies, or offices to deal specifically with it. So it foresees that it will be easy to implement because it already has laws that provide for it. But I think also what's important to note is that going forward, and in the bigger scheme of things, the government has a plan to formalize the informal or the artisanal mining sector. And that involves registering all artisanal miners, registering them with associations, and then dealing directly with those associations. And so if all artisanal miners are registered, if they belong to a union or an association, it will then become easier to monitor, to follow up, and to ensure that people are adhering to the laws. Those that are found in breach of the law or who fall foul of the law will then be dealt with accordingly. And so I think it all fits into the bigger scheme of things that the government is pursuing here to mainstream, to formalize this sector, which is crucially important in terms of gold deliveries and gold production.
Now, of course, mercury is known to be highly toxic. It poses a severe public health risk in Zimbabwe. But the reality is that these small-scale miners do rely on mercury in order to extract gold. So even as the government formalizes the sector, are they putting in place incentives and alternatives for these small-scale miners?
In the past, and certainly in the last few years, we've seen incentives that have been put forward to small-scale miners, to artisanal miners. There have been facilities that have been availed for procurement of equipment. They've been given equipment and machinery like jackhammers, generators, pumps, and those sort of things. And we expect that going forward, given the need to address the environmental impact that small-scale mining is having on Zimbabwe, on the land here, on the environment, we expect that there will be other facilities made available for the small-scale miners to procure or to invest in appropriate technology that is cleaner, that is more environmentally friendly. In the last few months, we've seen a number of mishaps and accidents at informal mines. That speaks to a number of malpractices, speaks to ignorance and a lack of awareness of the safety, the environmentally friendly operations that these miners should be engaging in. When I've spoken to some of the stakeholders, the key leaders of these mining associations, the Zimbabwe Mining Federation, for instance, one of the things that they have said is that there's a lack of awareness or appreciation of alternative methods to mining. And so that is why we often see them going into mines without appropriate protective wear, participating or engaging in these activities that are damaging, using dynamite, using mercury, for instance. So going forward, we do expect that government will try to increase awareness, to conscientize these miners of alternative, cleaner and more environmentally friendly methods going forward, as they've done in the past, to try and boost and ramp up production. And so to ensure that that growth is sustainable, we certainly expect that there will be investment in ensuring that there are more sustainable and alternative ways to producing this gold, Uche.
Well, we do have to leave it there, but thank you so much, Farai, for your insight into that. That, of course, is Farai Mwakutuya joining us there in Harare. Well, let's stay in the country. After the worst drought in decades, more than 500,000 urban residents in Zimbabwe are now due to receive cash transfers. Now, the funds are part of aid efforts to tackle a critical food deficit. Some families escaped hunger by practicing urban farming, which, despite being prohibited, has helped bridge the gap in food security for years. Here's Farai again with the details.
Thulani Ncube has 3 different pieces of land that she works in Harare's most densely populated Mbare suburb. She's been growing maize, beans, and a variety of other vegetables for 5 years now.
I no longer spend any money on food because all of my family's nutritional requirements are met from what I grow here. It's a stress-free way for me to feed them.
What she can't grow, she buys using proceeds from the sale of surplus produce from her gardens.
My family can't eat all the vegetables I grow, so we sell them in the market. If I manage to grow any excess maize, I also sell that and use it to buy other things that I need.
She harvested over a ton of maize last season and expects even more this time round due to the better rainfall. Her output would make some rural farmers envious, even though she's breaking the law.
Urban farming, particularly in areas like this, near the banks of a stream that's just beyond this crop of maize, is illegal. However, enforcement of the laws by the authorities has been lax, which is why activity continues to thrive.
Thousands of urban dwellers have invaded any available open space to grow food despite the potential environmental cost.
I know farming on the stream banks causes siltation, but I do it anyway because I need to survive. This is our way of life.
Zimbabwe is pinning its hopes of recovery from the current food shortages on continued good rains, which it hopes will produce enough to feed millions currently in danger of starvation. While urban farming is forbidden, it could help ensure that at least those in the cities have enough to put on their tables. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, let's head to Tunisia now. The country's assurance Maghrébia Group has started selling its shares to the public. Now, the company's CEO says the move will help revive the fortunes of the Tunis stock market. Here's Adnan Shaushi with the details.
Assurance Maghrébia has opened up 30% of its capital for sale to the public. The global offer is to trade 1,350,000 shares.
This is the first IPO at the Tunis Stock Exchange since 2018 and the unique IPO in 2020. Therefore, this move is made at the right time to revive the Tunis stock market.
The CEO of Maghrébia Group added that the insurance company has enhanced its position in the domestic market.
The IPO is important for Maghrébia and the insurance sector in general. Maghrébia will play a major role in the national economy and the insurance sector. It will reinforce the image of Maghrébia, consolidate the company's reputation and its transparency, and provide liquidity.
Habib Ben Hassin says that insurance companies in Tunisia have so far responded effectively to the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on their activities.
The impact of the crisis on the insurance sector in 2020 was on different levels. The first level is in terms of turnover of some branches like travel assistance, life insurance, technical risks, and transport insurance. It has also an impact on insurance premium recovery service from customers in difficulty and loss ratio of some branches. But overall, until now, insurance companies have managed this situation well.
Assurance Maghrébia is the third largest insurance group in Tunisia. It is a market leader in fire insurance, while it ranks second in health insurance. The CEO of Maghrébia says the successful Tunisian group is ready to invest abroad in other insurance companies. Analysts assert that the initial public offering reflects investor confidence despite the current economic and health crisis in the country. Adnan Shaushi, CGTN, Tunis.
You are watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break now. Still to come on the show. The European Union pins its COVID-19 recovery on a possible $2.2 trillion package. And Airbus China focuses on local assembly and delivery of its fleet.
taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant.
Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family member, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back. Well, let's now turn our attention to some news from outside the continent. 2020 isn't a year many in Europe want to remember. The coronavirus pandemic stole thousands of lives. It also left millions unemployed and plunged the European Union into the deepest recession in its history. And while recovery will take time, Brussels is pinning its hopes of a comeback on a $2.2 trillion spending package, a package that won't just pull the EU back from the pandemic's cliff edge, but will also overhaul the European economy for decades to come. Here's Tony Waterman reporting.
For anyone who drives an electric car, this is a constant headache. Pulling up to a charge point only to find the one machine tethered to other vehicles.
There's not enough charging places. You know, we want to change mobility more to electric, but then we need the infrastructure.
Luckily for Catherine Sheridan, her BMW 225XE is a plug-in hybrid, so it can run on petrol if necessary. But as the founder of a sustainability consultancy firm, she's loath to do so. Charge point scarcity is a problem across Europe. At the end of last year, there was just one public charge point for every 8 electric vehicles on the road. That infrastructure is now set for a major jolt after the EU earmarked 30% of its $2.2 trillion coronavirus recovery fund and long-term budget for green initiatives, including a massive rollout of charging stations. For Brussels top brass, the recovery fund, dubbed Next Generation EU, is about much more than just a post-pandemic recovery. It's about charting Europe's path to the future.
Next Generation EU can lead to the most ambitious overhaul of the European economy in decades.
It also sets aside billions of dollars to kickstart a digital transformation, investing in better connectivity and cutting-edge technologies like AI. And for the first time, the EU will borrow on international markets on a massive scale, then give much of it away as grants.
The real value of the recovery fund is a political one. But of course, there are important challenges. The fund itself will not help Greece to cope with all of its structural economic problems.
The money will start flowing in mid-2021. Oversight will be key to ensuring the money is optimally spent, not wasted or put towards projects that impede the EU's long-term goals. That's also a concern for Catherine Sheridan, who worries some of the funding will find its way into projects which claim to be greener than they really are.
We've already seen some plans to fund gas projects, for example, and that's not where we need to be going in terms of transitioning into more sustainable solutions. We need to stay consistent, stay ambitious, and take everyone along with us.
Driving away, she hopes, into a greener, more resilient Europe. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Brussels.
Now, Xiong'an New Area is China's vision for a green and smart city of the future. Our Ning Hong reports that what was once a blueprint just 3 years ago is now gradually becoming reality.
New city of the future is rising in this part of Hebei. Hundreds of buildings are coming up at a stunning speed. Over 100,000 workers are flocking to the city, and there will be more in the year to come as Xiong'an New Area is realized. In the city of Xiong'an, a new engine of development is taking shape. New technologies are being tested, used, and developed even in the construction sites. Yang Zhong is in charge of the construction in Xiong'an. Thanks to the 5G network that was deployed here, he's able to inspect all construction sites with his tablet.
On this platform, we can see the real-time construction of 227 construction projects under the management of the Xiong'an Group. For example, today, there have been 864 crane liftings with a total weight of 1,028 tons. The real-time working condition of each crane is also available.
The 5G network has been built by China's major telecommunications service providers. China Mobile is also building an Internet of Things, or IoT platform, that will provide data and computing power for companies in the city.
China Mobile now has over 700 of IoT devices. We have built a platform called OneLink to manage these resources.
The 5G network is enhanced by the Beidou navigation satellite system, which is a positioning service. It opens new possibilities for innovative solutions, such as self-driving drones. Here at the State Grid drone station, one of the drones has been programmed to monitor daily operation of power lines. Such a job uses days of work by humans.
The drone will take off and land automatically. We have input coordinates and given the drone a designated route to patrol the power lines.
Drone bases will be deployed across the region. This is the reality in Xiong'an, where a new engine of development based on technology and big data is turning into reality. Ning Hong, CGTN, Xiong'an.
Well, let's now turn our attention to the aviation sector. Demand for air travel and aircraft was severely hit this year by the coronavirus pandemic. The market is already leading the post-pandemic recovery. Plane makers, airlines and leasing companies are now focusing on local solutions to better serve the domestic market. Take a look.
This is a brand new Airbus A320 NeoJet landing outside the final assembly line Asia in Tianjin's Binhai New Area. The order came from aviation leasing company GCAS. The company has been in China for 30 years and put over 500 planes into. This NeoJet, delivered on December 29th, was the first from its own order book that was also assembled here in China. The plane's production is an increasingly popular local-for-local model in the aviation sector, especially during the pandemic.
This is a kind of a local solution for GCAS's local China customer. From this one, we demonstrate two things. One thing is the base level of this final assembly line compared with those final assembly line in Europe, as good as the level of those European lines. The second thing is that I think a local solution, especially under the current circumstance, a local solution really be very meaningful for GCAS and for GCAS customer, which is the Chinese airline, Colorful Guizhou. A local solution for the local airlines, which can reduce the lead time, avoid a lot of travel. This definitely will be very much welcome by the local customer.
The Colorful Guizhou Airlines that Mr. Xu mentioned will operate GCAS's Tianjin-assembled A320neo. Colorful Guizhou is among many Chinese airlines that began to recover earlier this year, thanks to effective virus control and a massive domestic market.
I think 2020 might have been the worst year for the entire aviation industry, but luckily we have seen Chinese airlines like Guizhou Colorful bucking the trend. The company was back to profit mode as early as this July. That is truly remarkable.
Actually, foreign companies like GCAS and Airbus have long been investing in fast-growing Chinese market, and they are not just in for sales. The industrial cooperation between China and the French playmaker is also centered around design and technology.
I think if you look at the Airbus cooperation project in China, it's not only the final assembly line. We have the joint venture of the engineering center, which is located in Beijing, which is a joint venture between us and AVIC. For example, the state-of-the-art A350 aircraft design capacity, 55% of design capacity is done in China. And we have also set up a joint venture in Harbin to manufacture, produce the large composite parts of the aircraft.
Xu said Airbus is hoping to build more solid strategic projects over the next 10 years, as well as working with Chinese industrial partners and local governments to develop local solutions for the Chinese market. Gao Songya, CGTN.
Well, let's now turn our attention to commodity markets today. Oil prices continue to rise as the U.S. inches closer towards another round of pandemic aid payments. The potential of this encouraging fuel demand is certainly helping to boost the market. But still, concerns over coronavirus lockdowns did cap those gains. Also, a new variant of the virus in the UK has led to renewing movement restrictions, which has hit near-term demand in the country and weighed on prices. Meanwhile, gold prices inching higher today as a softer dollar supported the metal. But traders say the metal is going to have a hard time finding a supportive narrative given the increase in positive news such as the passing of US stimulus measures and, of course, a Brexit deal coming out right now. Well, let's take a short break, still to come. Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda hope to revive maritime operations along Lake Victoria. And Algeria's olive sector is struggling to recover from COVID-related disruptions.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Algeria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better, CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Now, Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda are seeking to revive connected ports and maritime operations on the shared waters of the Lake Victoria. Now, experts say the three East African neighbors could generate up to $60 billion in trade annually. CGTN's Enoch Sikolia cruised through the lake to pinpoint areas that remained untapped.
She's one of the larger vessels crossing Lake Victoria. The water bus is a main mode of transport for those who live on the islands. Her mission, transporting hundreds of people and their property daily.
This thing is so nice. The reason is one, it doesn't have a lot of accidents like the road. Secondly, it is cheaper.
On her normal route, she carries people from Luanda Kotieno to Rusinga Island and back again every 2 to 3 hours. Water buses help keep the wheels of the regional economy turning.
Now, according to the people we've spoken to, there are a lot of opportunities that Lake Victoria dishes out in terms of water transport that are yet to be tapped. African countries.
These people would have put something that can work from all the 3 East African countries.
Even though there are many motorboats in the lake, ships are almost non-existent. And a few that can be spotted are considered permanently docked. For people like 60-year-old Tomboya, such pictures serve as a reminder of the old good days. Until the late 80s, ships carrying cargo would arrive at the then vibrant Kisumu port.
It was really, really blossoming. All that stuff from Uganda, like cows, mangoes, fish from Tanzania.
Produce was destined for local markets and beyond to Asia, Europe, and America.
Cargo from abroad imported things all the way from Kenya into Uganda and Tanzania, headed for places like Rwanda and other places. So it's not only serving the 3 countries, but it was serving much more than the 3 countries. Let's talk about the lake region countries.
But for years, ships docked along the Kisumu port have been dormant.
The biggest blow came when Kenya Railways stopped operating, and that really affected the business at the port because the trains were no longer coming, and instead we went into road transport and actually started using Malaba route and Busia route.
According to Agina, lake transport only realizes $6 billion annually for Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, but has the potential of generating 10 times that amount. Kenya has been rehabilitating the Kisumu port to position it as a hub for inland maritime transport.
All these will increase business here because there'll be people who are making boats, there'll be people who are repairing them, who are supplying them, and there'll be people who are bringing in goods and taking the goods from the port.
But this dream heavily depends on corresponding infrastructure and political goodwill across the water in Uganda and Tanzania. Enoch Sikolia, CGTN, Kisumu, Kenya.
Now, after winning the 2019-2020 World Oil Competition, Algerian olive farmers have now been looking for solutions to save this year's harvest. Now, the sector has been heavily impacted by the coronavirus pandemic and increasingly unstable weather. Here's CGTN's Alexandria Majala with the details.
The coronavirus pandemic as well as unstable weather due to climate change have impacted this year's oil harvest in Algeria. The country's olive farmers in the city of Tizi Ouzou say that less rain and snow meant less irrigation, adding that the lockdown and curfew imposed to battle the COVID-19 outbreak kept many at home and away from the fields where they tend to the trees.
This year we have a bad production of olives in Algeria. Harvest decreased by 40%, like all countries in the world. This is caused by global warming as well as COVID-19. Last year we had a good harvest and therefore we participated in international competitions where we won 3 gold medals, 2 international gold medals in Athens, 1 gold medal in London and another in Algeria.
Usually there are more olives because there is rain and snow, and olives need this. But unfortunately this year there aren't many olives because of the lack of water and because the olive trees have not been trimmed. When you trim the tree, you ventilate it and it gives you olives even when there's not enough rain. That's what I do to my trees, and thank God they gave me olives.
However, according to the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Algeria's national production of olives reached approximately 10.4 million quintals during the 2019-2020 season. That's against 8.7 million quintals in the previous year, a 65% increase. While olive trees generally do not produce the same year on year, factors such as weather conditions and poor upkeep also contributed to the fall in production in 2020. At the start of the coronavirus pandemic, Algeria's government imposed an intercity travel ban and a curfew on citizens across the North African nation. Algerian olive oil that comes from trees in the center-west of the country has won several international awards and exports to Europe.
We work in order to valorize our product, to export it abroad and to give it a place among international oils around the whole world.
Despite this year's setbacks, the Ministry of Agriculture is planning to reinforce exports of agricultural products, especially olive oil. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Well, before we leave you today, here's a quick look at Africa's currencies. South Africa's rand is slipping 0.3% as the impact of a stricter lockdown in the country announced by President Ramaphosa weighed on the currency and, of course, the stock market as well. In Nigeria, the naira remained pretty stable after weekend market. It stood at around 460 naira per dollar on the parallel market today. Well, that is it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.